And hello, everyone. And this is a follow up to a live stream I did about a week ago about how to change the government because of this COVID virus thing. I didn't finish everything because I wanted to keep it short. So this is like part two about how to create a new way forward for governing the countries in the world. Okay, so this is part two. So I'll just start straight away and people can catch up. So the first thing with governments, one of the most corrupt things in governments, every government in the world, is lobbyists. Lobbyists are groups of private companies that basically corrupt politicians. A good example is the pharmaceutical companies. So they will pay a politician a large sum of money, millions of dollars, to sign a bill or create a bill to allow their particular drug that hasn't been tested properly, by the way, into the market, and make a proviso for it. So I think a lot of people know what lobbyists do. Lobbyists are, sorry, Molly's back again. Lobbyists is what corrupted politics. Okay, so if you want to go forward and fix politics and things like that, you've got to ban lobbyists, ban them, full stop. No exceptions, right? If the government need information, they put out a tenure just like anyone else does, right? If you want people to come forward and give you ideas or put forward a solution, you put a tenure out. You don't need lobbyists, right? All they do is corrupt everything. Now, that said, I think any politician caught taking bribes should be charged with treason because they're doing it to feather their own nest. They're not doing it to look after the country or to represent the people. They're doing it to feather their own nest. That's treason, in my opinion. So they should get 20 years minimum. That's a good deterrent for other politicians that may want to, do some backdoor deals. 20 years straight off the top. And then the final thing with politicians, why aren't we psych testing these people before they go in? If you go into the police force, the military, anything like that, you are psych tested and further psych tested depending on how higher up you get, because you don't want these psychopaths, sociopaths, and weirdos in the army or in the police force, right? And they've got very good systems in place to weed out the psychos. They really do. So why aren't politicians held to the same standard? These are the people that are supposed to be running the country, but I can tell you now, the majority of them are psychopaths and or sociopaths, right? There's a difference, so I won't get into that now. But at any rate, they're in it for themselves. They're not in it to help anyone, but they're very good at charming people and fooling people. They come across as nice and friendly and warm and wonderful, but they're not. They're in it for themselves. So every politician, in the last video I said they should have to be qualified. They should go to university for 4 years. Then they apply for a job, right? And they're the people, that's the pool that you vote from, I meant to say, right? So when you go to the voting, the people that are put up for voting are qualified, they've done a university degree, and B, they've been psych tested, right? To prove that they're not some psychopath, mental case, right? So that's it. And finally, the other thing that really gets up my nose is politicians decide their own pay rises. That's ridiculous. How many companies have you ever worked for in the corporate world where you just decide your own pay rise? You don't. Pay rises come when the company's doing well or you've met all your KPIs, right? Key point indicators. So here's your job. This is what you're expected to do. You meet all them, so you keep your pay. If you go beyond them, you get a bonus, right? You get a pay rise. That's what we should do with politicians. And that should be decided by the people. And they can do that online the same way as I explained in the last video, right? So that's that. Now, in the last video, I also said, we've got to bring back production. I'll get to it because that's a bit of a long topic. That's why I left it till now. So I won't go into it too long. But as you're aware, under globalism, they outsource all production, all manufacturing. It all went to China and everywhere else, whatever, to the third world. So this is the globalist plan. We got to reverse all that. We've got to bring it all back into the country, retrain our young people, employ our young people. And how you do that, you can start that off with massive infrastructure programs. So a good example would be fast speed rail, for example. You could have a fast speed rail going from Melbourne up to Brisbane in Australia or across wherever, these things travel at 350 kilometres an hour, That's a lot. That's 150, 60 miles an hour, right? Maglev trains. It's a massive infrastructure job. It gives people work for probably 10 years, then the maintenance for another 20 years. And at the end of it, we have a new asset. And that's how you pay for it. Everyone says, how do you pay for it? Well, you pay for it because you create a national bank. Australia used to have national banks and then they privatised them all and they let the Rothschild private banks come in, right, to rape us all. So what you do is you create a government national bank and they create the money that you need for an infrastructure job because what they get at the end is a product, right? But in the meantime, that money goes into circulation within the economy and it boosts the economy because people go out, they spend the money, and blah, 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 blah. So it boosts the economy. You could do these infrastructure jobs all over the place, right? That's really how you do it. And then slowly you bring back all the production. And just as a thing too, like at the moment, there's food shortage nonsense and everything. Because we don't have the backpackers to come and pick the fruit. Well, we've got a lot of young people on welfare, right, that are sitting around playing video games. They're now being paid $500 to stay at home, which just happens to be about the same amount of money they would earn picking fruit, right? Isn't that a coincidence? So start to put the dots together, guys. Start to think about this stuff, right? Everything's for a reason. And that government never do anything to benefit the people. Never. Don't ever, ever get sucked into that. Anything they do, any decision they make is to either give themselves more power or to better themselves, not us, right? They never do anything for us, right? So don't get sucked into that. But that's the thing. We don't need overseas people to pick fruit, right? We've got thousands of people here that could do it, And that's a good job even for older people that, a lot of people in their 50s and 60s that get made redundant, it's very difficult for them to get back into the workforce because of their age. Hey, I reckon a lot of them would be happy to go out, on a sunny day and pick some fruit. I really think they would. So, they're the sort of things that we got to do. And as I discussed in the last video, land buyback, property buyback, no foreign nationals should own land or property, or especially in essential things like food production. I think that's an essential thing that shouldn't be outsourced to anyone. But I did cover that last time. Now finally, just to wrap this up, last time I got asked a question, and I get this question asked a lot. How do we change it? How do we bring this about? Okay, these are great ideas. How do we bring about the change? Right? That's a good, valid question. It's simple. People power. I'm a big fan of history, right? I know a lot of history. I studied history. I study it for my own enjoyment, to be honest. And what I know from history, I was thinking about this. First of all, the Bolshevik Revolution, right, which was funded by Wall Street, by the way, that would never have happened. Communism would never have got a foothold if Wall Street didn't fund it, right? There's a guy called Taft, T-A-F-T. He was working for the Rothschilds. He was one of their guys. He personally almost funded out of his own pocket, right? The Bolshevik Revolution that gave a foothold to the communists, because that's what this is. This is a communist takeover. It really is. And but when we look at what happened in Russia, remember the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of communism in Europe? How did that come about? Some of you might know. But look, the short story is the military stood down because the only way that communists could control the people was through fascist military dictatorship, basically is what it was, right? And the police sort of melded into that. But what happened was the generals just, I don't know why, but they just decided they'd had enough and they stood down and they told all the soldiers to stand down. As soon as that happened, the people started tearing the wall down, right? Communism collapsed overnight. Why? Because the military stood down. Then we go to Ceausescu in Romania. Similar story again. He was corrupt as they come. And the police stood down. Police just said, we've had enough of this guy. He's just a loser. He's corrupt. And they stood down. And what happened? The people went into his palace. They trashed it. They dragged him and his wife out by the hair and hung him up by a tree. That's what they did. Mussolini, the same thing happened in World War II. At the end of World War II, Mussolini, the military turned on him, right? They stood down and turned on him. The people dragged him out in the street and hung him up outside a gas station, right? By the heels, by hooks. That's what happens to these people. It's an illusion that they're the authority. It's an illusion they've gotten power. Without their police force and without their military, they got nothing. Think about it. Think about a politician in your country. So in America, can you imagine Nancy Pelosi coming knocking on your door saying, hey, I want you to, get this chip in your arm and blah, blah, blah. What a joke, right? Someone would just punch her in the nose and slam the door. And it goes for any country. These politicians are weak. They're pathetic. They work in politics because they can't get a job in the private sector. I'm serious, right? That's why they go into politics, because they're incompetent. They're not real smart, but most of them are psychopaths or sociopaths, right? So they yearn for power and money. That's why they're there, right? But they're not real bright. So the only way that they can pull off all this crap, all this nonsense, is by having a military arm or a police arm, right, who are going along with it. So this is the point I'm getting to. If we want this change to come around, now is the time. And how we got to do it, I believe, is to convince the police and the military to stand down. I'm not saying the police have to turn on the globalists and arrest them. No. Just stand down. All they have to do is say, we're not going to arrest anyone. We're just going to turn away. We're not playing ball anymore. And how we do that is we have to remind these cops and these soldiers that they are people. They are people like us, right? They're just like us. They're the same. And do they honestly think, when we all get rounded up and put into camps and chips in their arms and everything, do they think their children are going to be spared? Do they think their wife and husbands are going to be spared? No, right? They'll go. And if you don't believe me, look at history. Look at what the Bolsheviks did at the Russian Revolution. The first thing they did was get all the existing coppers, rounded them all up, called them political prisoners, and put them into gulags. And then they appointed their own people as the new police, right? That's where the Stasi came from, right? Political hacks, and they're thugs. So if you're a cop or you know a cop, you are not going to be saved. You're not going to get special treatment, right? You are one of us. And this is what they have to remember. You are one of us. You're one of the people. You've all got parents. You've all got brothers and sisters or children, right? That all depend on each other. So I believe that we need to start up a movement or start a hashtag or something, I don't know, that, us, the enforcers, the rule keepers, the order followers, whatever you want to call them, the enforcers is what I call them, ask them to step down. Just step down. Don't go to work or look the other way, whatever. If enough of them do that, the government will collapse because they're cowards. They are cowards. They'll all be packing their bags first plane out of the country. They will. They will shit themselves. And the other thing that you can help to do this, everyone's been told to stay at home and not go to work for the last month or whatever it is, 6 weeks. Just keep doing it. Non-compliance. And if you're an essential worker, don't do it. We have the power. The people have the power with our work. That's what we have over them. They cannot run this country if we don't go to work, as you've all seen with this coronavirus hoax, right? So they're the two ways I think. I'm sure other people have got other ideas and better ideas. I really do. All I'm doing is offering you a new future, because if we were to collapse the banking system, the government and everything tomorrow, if we don't have a new plan to put in place, those positions will just be refilled again with worse psychopaths and worse sociopaths, right? So we need to have something in place. And this is what I'm trying to offer. I don't know what the catalyst is. I don't know the exact mechanism and how you can trigger it, but what I'm trying to offer you is, what do you do once it's done? Once the system has collapsed, what do we do? Well, these points I'm giving you in these last two sort of videos is what I'm trying to give you. That's all. I think, as far as the catalyst, that's up to the people. I don't know what they'll tolerate. Like I said, I'd go after the enforcers. I'd convince them in a nice way, not in a violent way, but in a nice way. Sit down with them and say, hey, you're one of us. What are you doing to us? What you do to us is what you're doing to yourself and your own family. So that's what I believe we need to do. Anyway, short again, that's all I really want to cover at the moment. There's heaps of other stuff I want to talk about, but I want to save that for a separate thing because I want these two to go together. The last two streams about the country and stuff like that. So anyway, that's basically it. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening in, and for everyone else that watches this later, thank you very much, and bye for now.